Is the taxi game dead? In this video, I'm going to share some of my honest thoughts and opinions on threats and things that are coming to the taxi trade and things that are going on right now that could affect the future and longevity of the trade. The game itself is definitely not dead. London is still a massively growing city. You've only got to look at all the blocks that are going up and all the investment that comes to this great capital to know that people will still need to always get around. I'm going to be honest and frank with 5 things that I think could really affect the future of London cabbies. Number 1 is the cost of the vehicle. Now, at the time of recording this, Nissan Dynamo has actually pulled out of the London market, meaning that there is only one brand new vehicle you can buy if you want to work as a London taxi driver. That is the LEVC TXE. Now, this is a £60,000 vehicle, or £70,000 if you factor in the interest, because for many people, myself included, you're not going to be able to raise that amount of finance very easily. So we're stuck to having to pay 8.7% interest through an independent financer. That means to actually buy the vehicle yourself, you're looking at around £280 a week. And that's before you put any fuel, tax, insurance, all those things that contribute to the running of that vehicle. And if you rent it from a garage, you're looking at around £350 per week. The vehicle is more expensive than it's ever been, then of course your profit margins are significantly diminished. Being a London cabbie certainly isn't a part-time job. And in fact, I don't know where this notion ever came from, because if you look at those figures, 2-3 days is just covering those expenses. And of course, you want something to show for those days of work, meaning that it is a full-time job. And that's what a lot of people don't see. It's days 4 and 5 when you make the profit, and 6 and 7 when you can make serious profit. But all of a sudden, it's not the relaxing job everyone thought it was. You don't want to be out here working 6-7 days a week. You want to have a sustainable living. That is why people become London taxi drivers. And unfortunately, having such expensive vehicles is actually diminishing at that very freedom itself. Number 2 is the repairability of these vehicles. Now, when I first got my badge, my intention was to get a TX4, buy it, pay it off, and then use it for the longest amount of time that you can in London, which is 15 years. You would have 10 years without having to pay out for a vehicle. A bit like when you pay off your mortgage in your house. You haven't got to worry about those mortgage payments anymore. Your quality of life, how hard you have to work, is then significantly diminished because one of your greatest expenditures is now gone. However, the LEVC TXE or any other electric vehicle that's going to come on the market are highly technological vehicles. You can't repair these in the way that you could with, say, an older TX4. You know, a TX4, you could have an engine rebuild, gearbox rebuild, whatever. But that certainly beats paying 12 grand a year in finance payments. It's like if you own your own house and your boiler goes, right? It's not a nice bill, but that bill in itself isn't enough to make you go back to renting property, because you know in the long run that owning your own house is a much better financial situation. However, when it comes to the new electric taxis, the repair bills are insane. There was an invoice that floated around in some of the taxi groups of someone who had to have a battery replacement on one of these cabs out of warranty. And the bill, £18,000. £18,000. So therefore, it is not financially viable to ever run these vehicles outside of warranty. So you always have to be paying some kind of finance. You will never truly own the vehicle. Yes, you can live in the down payment cycle, i.e. my cab is on a 5-year deal. Once I've finished that deal, I then can sell that cab, chop it in for a new one and use that as a down payment on the next cab, thus bringing down my next finance bill. But it doesn't get rid of that finance bill entirely. I am still stuck within this cycle. I will always have to pay something, and arguably much higher expenses than any other cabbie previously. Third point I'm going to bring up is other expenses. Petrol and electricity costs have gone insane. So most street charging facilities will charge you between 35 pence a kilowatt to 44 pence a kilowatt. This means that on the TXE, a cab which has 60 miles when fully charged, assuming you don't use the aircon or the heater, that will cost you between £8.40 and £10.50. So at the higher end, that's around 17p a mile. It is just an insane amount of money. And we're kind of lucky that you can run these cabs on petrol because it is a hybrid. There is a generator which burns petrol to then charge those batteries. But this isn't reflected in our meter prices. The meter price in a cab is generated from a lot of factors, but effectively, how much is the vehicle, how much does it cost to tax and insure, to run, so on and so forth, and rough living costs to then generate a suitable standard of living. London taxis have not had a meter increase since 2019. So currently, in this post-pandemic world, we're arguably the only place that hasn't put their prices up. TfL and unions are consulting on how much the prices should be inflated by, but many people say the proposed increases do not go far enough and that it does not match inflation and the increased costs of living. Added with the cost of the vehicle and expenses, as we've already seen, it's another way that drivers are being stitched up. Number 4 is electric vehicles and specifically housing for electric vehicles. We know that drivers are being hammered for having combustion engines in London. The writing is very clearly on the wall. We've only got to look at the congestion charging zones, ultra low emission zones. The mayor wants everyone to go electric. But this brings a really awkward dynamic for London taxi drivers, and it will have a huge bearing on whether I'm able to actually do the job in the future. Let's look at it this way. I need to get to London to do the job. Therefore, I either need to live in London or an area around London. Simple. London is generally too expensive or limited in what I can buy in terms of housing. I currently rent, but looking at property prices in this area and beyond, I cannot afford to purchase even with my combined partner's salary. It's just impossible. So I need to look further outside of London. Hertfordshire, Bedfordshire, Essex, etc. We know that the future is electric, so therefore the house I invest in or the house I purchase needs to have some kind of charging capability. So you're adding another factor to housing which is quite hard to come by and will push the property price up, such as a drive, a wall socket where you can charge your vehicle. What you earn as a London taxi driver is nowhere near enough to get a mortgage in London. Therefore, you have to move more out of London, but you can't move too far because you need to be able to charge your vehicle to get back to London to do your job. I don't know how I'm going to do this. And I think I just might have to get incredibly lucky in finding the right place that has this kind of infrastructure. Yes, we can say that charging infrastructure will improve with things like superchargers, like the Teslas have, meaning that you can charge a vehicle in 10 minutes. But if we look at the rollout that TfL has done on their current range of chargers, I'm very skeptical about how long this might actually take. So therefore, I need a house with a drive, in close proximity to London, and affordable on what I can earn as a taxi driver. So I either rent for the rest of my life, or I get out of the trade so I have more opportunities in terms of housing. I don't have to think about where am I going to park my super expensive electric vehicle that needs to be plugged in so I can get back to London. It's just insane. I can't even say, well, screw it, I'm going to move to Gloucestershire and just suck up a really long commute because I still need to get that electric vehicle into London. And the 5th point is accessibility for streets and roads. More and more roads are closing in London. And it's been accelerated since the pandemic in the past couple of years. And I just dread to think what that's going to look like in the next 5 years and so forth. More roads are closing, no roads are opening. This isn't a greed thing of, oh, I'm a cab driver, I should be able to go anywhere. It's just basic accessibility. You get in a cab because you want door-to-door service, whether that's for mobility or convenience. If you can walk the rest of the way, then everyone would get on buses. But that's not the way the world works. People want to get from A to B. And it's not even always about the direct access part of it. The implications are that it creates more traffic in the areas surrounding those closures because vehicles can't use these through routes. Therefore, everyone is forced into the same road, the same one way of driving. So it creates more congestion and I can't get passengers to the destinations quick enough. If there was a day of the week where hypothetically there was no traffic on the roads and I could get anywhere in London without really having to think about this thing called traffic, I would pick that day of the week to work all the time, because you can cover more distance. The meter in a cab favors distance over time. That would be the most effective way to do my job. But we get stuck in traffic and it's not suitable for anyone. People think it's great for us cabbies, but the meter goes up slower. So my earning potential is diminished. Therefore, I have to work longer hours to make it more sustainable. We no longer have different options of, oh, I can go this way, I can go that way. It's a case of, I've got to go that way and I've got to sit in it. If it doesn't move, there's nothing I can do. That's the only way to get to that destination. I mean, it's largely why I work evenings. And even that is a compromise I have to deal with. I mean, right, I'm a younger cab driver, but I don't represent every taxi driver. Some have families, they don't want to be working late into the evening. They want a more normal schedule. Traffic is a lot lighter towards the end of the evening, meaning that I can get through some of these jobs much quicker. But if I worked more of a day shift, I'd have to sit in a lot more traffic, and this will diminish my earning potential. I can't see it getting any better. It's not like people are saying, well, you've lost access to this road, but the vehicles are now cheaper. Or, yes, the vehicles are more expensive, but there's more roads you can drive on. Everything is kind of a negative, because people have this notion that, oh, cabbies must be minted, oh, they wouldn't do it if it wasn't any good for them. But a lot of people, myself included, we're kind of in the system. Like, I've done my knowledge, I've got a cab on finance. I do have to suck it up for a bit, and maybe towards the end of the finance agreement, I can look and reassess and go, you know what? Where is the direction this is going? What is the end goal here? I do love the job, but it is very much a full-time vocation. You do have to put the hours in, and added to the fact that the post-pandemic world has exacerbated some of these issues, I can't see it getting any better anytime soon. If you've enjoyed this video and want to learn a little bit more about some of the expenses I've highlighted in this video, check out this video over here. See you again soon. Bye bye.